Here's something I want you to hear before you cut another carb. You might not need to. What if the problem isn't what you're eating, but how fast it hits your blood? Because there is a very small thing, literally 1 tablespoon, that you can do before almost any meal to blunt your blood sugar spike. It costs less than a stick of gum. Your doctor will measure the damage of years of blood sugar swings at your next checkup. But almost nobody teaches prevention right there at the table, in the 10 minutes before you sit down. By the end of this, you'll know exactly what to use, exactly how to prepare it, and the single timing detail that makes or breaks the whole thing. Let's get into it. So first, let's talk about what we're actually trying to prevent. Because the enemy here is not carbohydrates, full stop. I want to be clear about that. The enemy is the speed. It's how fast sugar floods the bloodstream after you eat. Picture flooring the gas pedal in your car. That's what a fast blood sugar spike does to your body. Your pancreas has to slam on the brakes by releasing a surge of insulin. That insulin yanks the sugar down hard, and an hour or so later you're foggy, hungry, reaching for something sweet again. You didn't lack willpower. Your blood sugar crashed. Repeat that pattern often enough over months and years, and your cells start tuning out insulin's signal. That's insulin resistance. It's the foundation under stubborn belly fat, relentless cravings, and eventually the road toward type 2 diabetes. And the wild part is this. The same plate of pasta, the same slice of bread, can spike your blood sugar hard or barely move the needle at all, depending almost entirely on what happens in the 10 minutes before you take your first bite. That's the window we're going to talk about. And the thing that goes in that window is vinegar. 1 tablespoon of vinegar, any kind, apple cider vinegar works beautifully, white wine vinegar works, plain white vinegar works, stirred into a large glass of water and drunk 10 to 15 minutes before a carb-heavy meal. That's the whole trick. 1 tablespoon, a full glass of water, before the meal. Simple enough that it's almost easy to dismiss. So let me tell you why it works, because the science behind it is actually quite elegant. Vinegar's active ingredient is acetic acid. Acetic acid does two things in your body that together put a ceiling on how fast glucose can flood your blood after a meal. First, it slows how quickly your stomach empties its contents into the small intestine. Think about it this way. Your stomach is normally in a bit of a rush to hand food off downstream. Acetic acid tells the stomach to slow that handoff. A 1998 study published in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition, 10 healthy volunteers, a randomized crossover design, found that vinegar delayed the rate of gastric emptying meaningfully. The researchers measured it directly using a paracetamol absorption technique, a well-validated marker of gastric emptying speed. They described that slowing as a key mechanism for the improved blood sugar they observed after a starchy meal. When the stomach takes its time, carbohydrates arrive at the intestine in a slower, gentler stream, rather than one big wave. That by itself flattens the spike curve. But here's the second mechanism, and this one is particularly interesting. Acetic acid also helps your muscles pull glucose out of the blood more efficiently. Research published in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition in 2014 looked specifically at people with impaired glucose tolerance, a high-risk group, 8 participants, randomized crossover, and found that vinegar before a meal enhanced blood flow to skeletal muscle and improved forearm muscle glucose uptake compared to placebo. What that means in practical terms is that the muscles became better at acting as a glucose sink, drawing sugar out of the blood faster after the meal. The same effect showed up the following year in a 2015 study published in the Journal of Diabetes Research, this time in 11 people with established type 2 diabetes. Vinegar again increased insulin-stimulated forearm glucose uptake and measurably reduced postprandial glucose and insulin levels. 2 separate populations, 2 separate research groups, the same directional finding. On a cellular level, the mechanism involves AMPK, adenosine monophosphate activated protein kinase, a protein that acts like an energy-sensing switch inside muscle cells. Work published in PLOS One using cultured muscle cells found that acetic acid is rapidly taken up, activates AMPK, and triggers increased production and translocation of glucose transporters, specifically GLUT4, to the surface of the muscle cell, where they can absorb glucose faster. What makes AMPK particularly interesting is that it operates through an insulin-independent pathway. That means even when a cell is starting to become resistant to insulin's signal, the AMPK door remains open. Vinegar can nudge glucose into the muscle through a side entrance that doesn't require the main lock to be working. So vinegar both slows the flood of sugar coming in and helps clear it more efficiently once it's there. Two levers working at the same time, acting on two completely different parts of the system. Here's the image I want you to carry. Picture a drawbridge over a moat. When you eat carbs without any preparation, that drawbridge slams flat instantly. Everything rushes in at once, overwhelming the system. Vinegar lowers that drawbridge slowly. The carbs still arrive, they still get absorbed, but they arrive gently, over time, in a way your body can actually manage. The spike is flattened, the crash doesn't happen. You feel steady 2 hours later instead of ravenous and foggy. And I want to stay here for a moment, because I think this is the part people underestimate. We're not talking about a subtle laboratory whisper of an effect. We're talking about a real, measurable shift in how your body handles a meal. Think about that 2-hour window after dinner when a lot of people can't concentrate, feel irritable, or find themselves standing in front of the refrigerator even though they just ate. That's not a character flaw, that's biochemistry. A sharp glucose spike is followed by a sharp drop, and your brain interprets that drop as an emergency. Hunger signals, cravings, brain fog, irritability. Vinegar, consumed correctly, intervenes in that chain before the meal even begins. The irony is that by spending 30 seconds before dinner, you can spend 2 hours after it actually feeling like yourself. Now, how much does it actually help? A 2017 systematic review and meta-analysis published in Diabetes Research and Clinical Practice, pooling data across multiple clinical trials, found that vinegar consumption significantly attenuated postprandial glucose and insulin responses in both healthy people and in people with impaired glucose tolerance or type 2 diabetes. The effect size on glucose, measured as a standard mean difference, was around negative 0.6. On insulin, it was even more pronounced, at around negative 1.3. These are not rounding errors, they are clinically visible reductions. For people who already had blood sugar problems, the glucose flattening effect was particularly meaningful. And critically, the effect was specific to vinegar as vinegar. When researchers tested isolated acetate or other short-chain fatty acids separately, the blood sugar benefits were not replicated in the same way, which tells us something important. The whole vinegar, consumed the right way, is what produces the effect. Which brings me to the protocol, because there are exactly 3 details that matter here. First, 1 tablespoon. Not a shot glass of pure vinegar, not a splash. 1 tablespoon, measured, in a large glass of water, at least a full 8 ounces, ideally more. This matters enormously for reasons I'll get to in a moment. Second, and this is the make or break detail, the one thing I most want you to remember from this entire video: timing. You must drink it 10 to 15 minutes before the meal, not during dinner, not with dessert, not right after you finish eating, before. That pre-meal window is the entire mechanism. The acetic acid needs to be in your system, already slowing gastric emptying, when the carbs start arriving. Every clinical trial that demonstrated a blood sugar benefit administered the vinegar before the meal. That's how every positive finding was generated. When vinegar is consumed during or after eating, the benefit shrinks dramatically or disappears entirely, because at that point the stomach is already processing food, the gastric emptying gate is already open, and there is nothing left to slow down. With dessert, you've already missed the window. The whole effect lives in that pre-meal 10 to 15 minutes. Third, always dilute. Always. I'll say it again. Always dilute in a full glass of water. This is not optional, and here's why people quit within a week if they skip this step. Undiluted apple cider vinegar is highly acidic. Case reports in dental literature document severe enamel erosion in people who drink vinegar straight, including a documented case of serious dental decay in a 15-year-old girl who consumed a full cup of undiluted apple cider vinegar daily as a weight loss strategy. Undiluted vinegar can also irritate or burn the esophagus. It's unpleasant, it's damaging over time, and it's completely avoidable. A full glass of water drops the acid concentration dramatically, protects your enamel, protects your throat, and frankly makes the whole thing easy to do every day. If you want to be extra careful, rinse your mouth with plain water after drinking it, and wait 30 minutes before brushing your teeth. One free bonus while we're here. If you want to stack another lever on top of the vinegar, eat your vegetables and any protein first. Save the starchy carbs for last. Fiber and protein in the stomach ahead of the starch slows digestion further and compounds the blood sugar smoothing effect. It costs you nothing to rearrange the order of your bites. Now let's talk about the 3 mistakes I see people make with this, because getting the mechanism right matters nothing if you undo it. Mistake number 1, using it undiluted. I just covered why: enamel damage, throat irritation, and it's so unpleasant that people abandon it within a week. A full glass of water, every single time. If apple cider vinegar's flavor bothers you, even if it is diluted, a small squeeze of lemon helps, or try white wine vinegar, which is milder. Mistake number 2 is the big one, and it's the timing. Drinking the vinegar with your meal, or worse, after you've finished eating. This is by far the most common way people use it, and by far the least effective. At that point, the stomach is already processing food. Gastric emptying is already in progress, and you've missed the preloading window where the acetic acid can do its job. 10 to 15 minutes before. Set a phone reminder if you have to. That gap is the entire point. Mistake number 3, and this one is psychological. Treating the vinegar as a license to eat whatever you want in whatever quantity. Vinegar buffers a spike. It does not neutralize a 1,000-calorie dessert. It does not reverse insulin resistance on its own. Think of it as a buffer, not a force field. A tablespoon of vinegar before a reasonable carb-containing meal, genuinely helpful, consistently supported by research. A tablespoon of vinegar before an enormous serving of pure sugar, a smaller spike is still a spike. This habit works beautifully in the context of a reasonably balanced diet. It is not a workaround for a diet that isn't. Before I let you go, I need to say this clearly, because I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't. If you are on medication for blood sugar, metformin, insulin, any glucose-lowering drug, talk to your doctor before you start using vinegar regularly. Vinegar can have an additive blood sugar-lowering effect, and if you're already medicated, that stacks in ways that could be meaningful and need monitoring. The same applies if you're on diuretics or certain blood pressure medications, because vinegar affects potassium levels, and the interaction matters. If you have chronic acid reflux, or GERD, vinegar can aggravate it. This habit is probably not right for you without a conversation with your doctor first. And if you have chronic kidney disease, your kidneys handle acid differently. Check before adding a regular acid load to your diet. Vinegar is a kitchen tool, not a treatment. It doesn't replace anything your doctor has prescribed. Not a single pill, not a single recommendation. This is evidence-based information, and it is not medical advice. Now here's what I want you to hold on to. A family history of diabetes is a heads up. It is not a verdict. It is not a life sentence. And you have a tablespoon-sized lever sitting in your pantry right now, probably in the back of a cabinet next to something you haven't used in months. The science behind it is real, the cost is essentially zero, and the habit takes 30 seconds. Tonight, before dinner, try it. Mix 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar into a tall glass of water, drink it 10 minutes before you sit down, and pay attention to how you feel 2 hours later. Not foggy, not crashing, not already hungry again. Just steady. If this gives you something worth trying, hit subscribe so the next one finds you. And if you know someone who keeps being told to just cut carbs, but nobody ever taught them this, send it to them. It might be the first practical thing that actually sticks.